It's January, and you know what that means. An actual, timely retrospective year list. What a concept. Now, apart from the overly eager timing, the practice of looking back on years for games, in particular, tends to fall into the classic case of the grass always being greener. You've all heard it before.
This wasn't a super impressive year. Not like last year. That one was the bomb. And hey, look at next year. That one has so many good upcoming releases. You know, this year was more like an in-between year.
Whatever that means, because in retrospect, has there ever been a standout bad year for games except like the industry crash in 1983? If you doubt us, please mention a year in the comments that you think is bad and see how everyone would respond with a bunch of great releases for that year. And no, this does not mean that you lose some kind of argument. This just means that you get recommended like a bunch of fantastic games. It's a total win-win. We have had someone argue to us that 1998 was a mediocre year for games. You know, that one where Ocarina of Time, Half-Life, and Metal Gear Solid were released. Games that literally defined the decade and the industry for years. So what we're trying to say is that this doesn't mean anything. So anyway, here we are, looking back on 2019, the mythical in-between year. But of course, Sony and Microsoft are saving their big guns for this year. That's what we're waiting for. They're biding their time, while everyone else in the industry are just rolling their thumbs. Wait. Alright, so, after some research, we found out that there's like a billion other developers who were actually making and releasing games in 2019. We gotta get this information to Jeff Keighley right away before the Game Awards. While we wait for that, let's go over 2019 then. Look at some games that were either really good or interesting, perhaps worth your while. Sadly, but obviously, we didn't get to play everything, and perhaps we didn't like everything, but we did our best in covering the grounds we could. So, here we go, in no particular order, because linear rankings are fundamentally bullshit. As a bright and colorful management title, Wilmot's Warehouse is a fun time for those of us who like organizing. Really, you don't need more than the increasing chaos of being handed more boxes and makeshift categories than you can keep up with. But beyond this goofy exterior, Wilmot's Warehouse is a surprisingly poignant work simulator that perfectly displays the issues of constant profit growth on understaffed work relations. In a present where conditions for Amazon warehouse workers are abysmal, it's uplifting that the gamification of this is less corporate propaganda and more an argument for why we need unions. Yes, indeed, this happy little box person carrying junk is politics in video games. Fucking fight us! Resident Evil 2 takes the series back not only chronologically, but also mechanically. More emphasis is put on genuine horror, scarcity of ammunition, and solving strangely misplaced puzzles. It is not possible to fight all the enemies you encounter, and it quickly becomes clear that you have to be tactical with how you engage, or if you do at all, for that matter. As a reimagining of the second Resident Evil game, it doesn't make the original irrelevant, but rather repackages the story beats into something more modern, without actually dumbing it down. It is also, sometimes, very intentionally goofy, and we like that. To no one's surprise, the long-awaited Switch iteration of Super Mario Maker was a hit. And why wouldn't it be? It's essentially a gateway to endless Mario fun. Making levels is fun, sharing levels is fun, Playing levels is fun. It may seem effortless, but really, the foundation of Super Mario Maker is the overall success and cultural impact of the Mario games. Anyone will understand the gist of Mario, and that's why giving the tools away like this is so exciting. A game for everyone has now become an expression for everyone. The fusion of video games and pinball should be a lot more common and obvious, considering they share the arcade as their common birthplace. We may get some quirky, in-depth board hopping, but here comes Creature in the Well, and is an action-adventure where you explore caves and ancient machinery filled with bumpers and ball dispensers. On paper, it sounds ridiculous, but in practice, it feels surprisingly natural, while also having the added bonus of doing all the satisfying bumping, shinging, and zooming of a real-life pinball machine. Presented in tasty Mike Mignola shades and deep black, this is a soothing eye pleaser. That creature lurking in the shadows is both fascinating and wicked. As an inspirational hodgepodge, Sayonara Wild Hearts is familiar and probably wears the influence from games like Res and Tempest on its sleeve. However, in the process, it transcends all these little bits and bobs and becomes its own beast. Not quite a racing game, not quite an action game, not quite a shooting game, the only core aspect being its rhythmic focus. Sayonara Wild Hearts is like an interactive album about heartbreak and introspection with little spoken words, but lots to talk about. Between games like Sayonara Wild Hearts, Mustache, and Songbird Symphony, it seems 2019 was a particularly good year for odd genre-defying rhythm games. With the crowning poster child being Cadence of Hyrule, a super unexpected crossover between acclaimed indie game Crypt of the Necrodancer and the classic The Legend of Zelda series. No one expected that one. Turns out though that making a randomly generated dance action game out of Zelda was just the right thing to do. Cadence of Hyrule is refreshing, intriguing, and addicting with just the right amount of challenge. Renewing an old game for new hardware is always a tricky balance between updating the design to modern standards and leaving enough of the original intact for the experience to feel familiar. In your struggle to appeal to either the new or old audience, you run a risk of alienating both. Link's Awakening burst straight out of the gate with confidence that this old Game Boy title had what it takes even to this day, which is commendable. Apart from expanded button options and some other slight quality of life improvements, the game plays and feels very much like a 25-year-old one, without losing any of the appeal from back in the day. This careful attention to historical preservation is extra remarkable in the upgraded visuals, which lovingly upscale the old designs in high-resolution 3D without subtracting from the old aesthetic. It's a perfect way of making this little Game Boy game still feel quaint and humble, even on a massive television. It seems every other year there's a new Metroidvania game pushing the old one off its throne. Will Gato Roboto push Hollow Knight from that position? Probably not, but as a short little trip harkening back to the classic Metroid games, it's perfectly worth your while. Also, the cat is named Kiki. We basically have to endorse that. After Konami basically murdered and buried the classic Castlevania series, Koji Igarashi and his team took it upon themselves to uphold its legacy on their own. Bloodstained Ritual of the Night is everything we had been hoping for when it first popped up on Kickstarter in 2015, and being Castlevania in all but name, it feels more like a nice return rather than a step in a new direction. There is of course a huge castle to explore, enemy abilities to collect, tough bosses to fight, and several different endings scattered throughout the game. If you loved the Castlevania games on the Nintendo DS back in the day, you will feel right at home with this one. Despite all the criticism about how the trees look like shit, Pokemon Sword and Shield is actually a pretty good game. Of course, in a lot of ways, it is just more Pokemon. You know what to expect by this point, but it has not yet lost its charm. The clear British influences that characterize the New Galar region, as well as its inhabiting Pokemon, is just simply lovely, even making some of the greatest designs for the series in a long time. Pokemon Trainer Hooligans, Ghost Teacups, and the reminder that the sea is dying because of pollution are just some of the highlights in this easygoing adventure. It is always hard to genuinely recommend an expansion to a long-running MMORPG with only a few words. The amount of time that has to be spent to even get to the content in question is nothing to sneeze at, but this is legitimately worth it. Final Fantasy XIV is not only the best MMO experience of the decade, it is also the best Final Fantasy game since whichever last was your favorite. It has a huge cast of likable characters, great stories of fantasy shenanigans and political intrigue, mechanical heavy bosses that can be tackled in many different difficulties depending on what suits you, and just an all-around lovely community. With Shadowbringers, there has never been a better time to explore the world of Eorzea. Taking the heavy combat focus of the classic RPG game and wholeheartedly pivot towards conversations, choices, and actual role-playing is one of the best things that could have ever happened to the genre. Disco Elysium delivers outrageously well-written dialogue and meaningful interactions in a package where your input actually serves to inform the rest of the experience. The way skills represent aspects of your character's psyche that will interact with you directly, give you ideas, flesh out who you are, and even play dumb tricks at your expense is simply brilliant and makes for some of the most engaging reading you'll do in a video game from 2019. If you've ever played Animal Crossing and felt that you don't want to plan your game sessions around the almanac, or that you'd prefer if the game had tangible goals, this is the game for you. A Short Hike is an adorable hike around a cozy resort island presented in lo-fi DS 3D graphics, where you explore and help other little animals in their daily lives. The grand goal is to climb a mountain because that's the only spot on the island with phone reception, and you really gotta take a very important call. So there's a kind of socioeconomic postmodern zeitgeist element to it too. Take a Paradise Island trip in this cozy voxel puzzle adventure. The Tourist is basically a game where side quests and minigames take front stage in marking your progress. It's a relaxing shift in focus that shows how the little things can be just as important as the big stuff for a meaningful game experience. Let's be honest, exercising sucks. And while attempts have been made to gamify the experience of getting fit and sweaty, it has never really been that appealing to us. Enter Nintendo's Ring Fit Adventure, the spiritual successor to Wii Fit. With light RPG mechanics combined with a simple runner game, surprisingly responsive motion controls, and a rather helpful and cute assistant, Ring Fit Adventure manages to become not only a great tool for exercising, but also an enjoyable game in its own right. Running up a sweat through some incredibly gorgeous landscapes and fighting against creative training equipment monsters in pursuit of an evil bodybuilder dragon was honestly one of the best experiences of 2019. For people who enjoy games like Dark Souls, 2019 was for the most part a great year. While some titles, like the horrendously life-crushing Decay of Logos, completely missed the mark, others were more successful in their endeavors. The Surge 2 shows it understands what it is cribbing from, with a well-balanced healing system that nicely dictates the pacing of every single encounter. Combine that with satisfying finishing moves that grant new armor pieces by cutting off body parts of enemies, and you have yourself a heck of a good time in a dystopian future of augmentations and corporations. Cyberpunk has sadly become more contemporary than we maybe would like to admit, so between all the sad reality nonsense, it's refreshing to indulge in some neo-noir romanticism. Tales of the Neon Sea is a side-scrolling point-and-click riddle adventure where you crack a case in a cyber future. It's got cool detective bits and fun parts where you explore the lower world of mobcat drama. We love it. Not very surprising, earlier videos considered, we love Katana Zero. As a fast-paced action spectacle, it's a phenomenal game filled with little variables that will make your own approach to any situation unique and fun. At the same time, it's a highly relatable narrative about mental health issues and substance abuse, in which the story components not only frame the game aspects, but bring them some actual context and meaning. Katana Zero is a fulfilled self-aware game that brings the potential of the medium forward in the best way possible. The primal joy of being a violently rampaging gorilla. What defines Ape Out is its simplicity. You use 2 buttons to throw or punch, and as such, the game doesn't need to showcase anything more complicated than that. You punch the living daylight out of anything that dares cross your path towards freedom, as violent jazz cymbals chime for every blow. Presented as an interactive classic jazz record, Ape Out is audio-visual fulfillment in all its glory. And then there is Ape Out Jr., the best classic Donkey Kong game never made. Released as the hidden jewel of the Devolver Bootleg compilation, this game has the next level authentic NES emulation. Whereas some titles in the mix were jokes on crap quality bargain bin garbage and cute parodies, Ape Out Jr. feels like an actual arcade experience designed around the limitations of the hardware. Replace Jumpman with a violent Donkey Kong Jr. and you've got simple banana collecting joy. For the last few installments in the Fire Emblem series, a bigger focus has been put on the interactions between characters and the overall social connection you, as a player, have with them. Fire Emblem Three Houses takes this to the next level with more options and an approach reminiscent of the now more kindred Persona series. Taking some time off to drink tea with your anime pals is a lovely experience to say the least. The strategic elements are luckily also still intact and could be argued better than ever. There is a little bit for everyone here. In the eternal wait for Nintendo to just release a new Advance Wars for a modern system, Wargroove works as a perfectly good substitute. Functioning very similarly, it's a colorful and approachable strategy game that will feel easy to grasp, but also allow deep mastermind tactical thinking that we can't even wrap our heads around. We can finally play Advance Wars on the go in actual sensible resolutions, and we're living for it. Also, there's a dog character who's so good he has personal guards to fight his battles for him. We love you, Caesar. Games about building beautiful cities usually have complex mechanics, and more often than not require a lot of time and effort from the player. Islanders strips the genre down to its very core and delivers an experience that, even though bare bones, never fails to entertain. Strategically placing buildings to score as many points as possible and then moving on to a new island makes for a more fast-paced and minimalistic approach that we rarely see in this type of game. As a love letter to ActRaiser, Soul Seraph is a worthy successor that finally lays its honestly pretty dated predecessor to rest. The strategy sections are calm and amusing instead of triggering our anxieties like the original, while the action sections offer more precise and versatile movements than previously. It seems this one got quite a lot of flack, particularly from old fans of ActRaiser. But playing the two for the first time back to back, like we did, made it clear that perhaps the nostalgia glasses have been a bit too rose-tinted for some. While not without problems, we quite like Soul Seraph and are sad to see all the undeserved hate it gets. We think you should at least give it a chance. Where Bethesda continues to fail to deliver anything of real value or substance, like literally, what the fuck, others have had to give us the games they are incapable of making. Obsidian never got to make the sequel to Fallout New Vegas after upstaging the owners at their own game, and therefore made the Outer Worlds instead. Set in a capitalistic hellscape where your choices determine the future of an entire colony, this first-person role-playing game manages to be both humorously satirical and serious at the same time. With lovely companions, well-written dialogue, and some perfectly serviceable action, The Outer Worlds stands out as a long-awaited return, although in new clothes. In an environment where vast open worlds and deep lore are a dime a dozen, it's difficult to make something completely centered around that exploration and mystery remain consistently intriguing. Outer Wilds accepts the challenge and gives us a smaller cosmos to explore, where anything you stumble across on your travels will not only contain something of note, it will also further your drive for digging deeper into your research. With no combat or other noteworthy game mechanics, apart from walking around and maneuvering your spaceship, Outer Wilds sets a strong example for the potential of the medium to be anything it wants to be. Like a modern take on the underrated Echo the Dolphin series, Coral sees you taking control of a sea current, exploring the ocean, and restoring life. Along the way, you get to learn real-life facts about the coral reefs that range from fun trivia to eye-opening urgency. Like a nature documentary in game form, Coral is serene, gorgeous, informative, and determined in its cause. Hashtag save the coral reefs, no seriously, fucking save it! Being the more expressive out of the two brothers, it was only natural for Luigi to expand his catalog of games, and Luigi's Mansion 3 manages to not disappoint. It takes inspiration from both predecessors, while still being very much his own beast, tweaking and expanding on what already worked. The charming and colorful characters once again take center stage, with Luigi himself stealing the show, and the new mechanics bring with them creative puzzles. The possibility to play the whole adventure together with a friend as Luigi also adds some extra fun to an already great package. As Dr. Glenn Pierce would say, perception is reality. Superliminal is a trip through an Escher wonderland where proportions and perspective is highly subjective. Equal parts Portal and Fez, Superliminal is a fantastic journey from start to finish that you really shouldn't miss. Considering Tetris is an over 30-year-old super refined game that more or less shaped the entire puzzle game genre, it's easy to just arbitrarily consider it perfect and move on. Of course, attempts to renew the concept has always been made, with recent examples including Puyo Puyo Tetris, which mixed it up with another popular franchise, and Tetris Effect, which is basically just Tetris in luminous packaging. It turned out though that the best and most simple way of bringing Tetris forward to the next level was to expand on the constantly neglected multiplayer option. And we're not talking small potatoes here, we're going full on 99 people fighting to the death. It placed Tetris in a social context where suddenly we had all spent 3 decades training towards this very moment where our skills would be set to the test. It's relentless, nerve-wracking, glorious, and endlessly entertaining. It's Picross. Again. While absolutely an authentic embracing of the Y2K aesthetic, Crossnick is not just a neat little visual novelty, but also the most refreshing new puzzle game concept since probably 2048. Like a more exciting and structured version of the old browser classic Shuzzle, this game sees you arranging colored pieces into crosses in a simple yet addicting hunt for high scores. If you want to play an actually new puzzle game, this is the one for you. 2019 gave us the long-awaited localization of The Liar Princess and the Blind Prince, a curious picture book puzzle platformer with cool designs and an interesting eco-like core mechanic. While far from perfect, the clumsy storytelling being the worst offender, it's an adorable little game with its heart in the right place. As we in the reviews business would say, it's a mixed bag. It's surprising how being pure chaotic evil can come off as so hilariously fun in a way that is not just lighthearted and easily communicated, but also seemingly universal considering the widespread popularity of the game. In Untitled Goose Game, you are a horrible goose who lives for making life miserable for people. You're basically creating scenarios which would ruin someone's day and loving every single moment of it. With no remorse, we steal this kid's glasses and make him buy his own toy plane back, or having these two neighbors hate each other after accidentally destroying each other's property. That's a quite nice harmonica you got there. Drop it in the well. Okay, let's be honest, this is a really dumb game. On purpose though, mind you. You play as the frog detective, solving a mysterious mystery crime which revolves around an invisible witch. Ooh. Sadly, there is not much lobster cop, but we can't have everything now, can we? It's short, it's cheap, it's sweet. It's also really funny. Casually cruising in as the most adorable game in years, Yoshi's Crafted World is a masterwork of directed aesthetic. Everything in this game looks like authentic kids' crafts, presented as some super cozy forgotten children's television program. Yearning through the levels is an absolute joy in how it both mixes the highly acclaimed Yoshi's Island formula of constant fun and quirky level gimmicks with environmental exploration that really lets you stop and take in every little detail of this lovingly crafted world. We expected a safe, middle-of-the-road Nintendo game and got something with a lot more heart in the process. Taking a classic franchise and reversing the gender roles sounds on paper like it would be a tired and uninspired spin-off of something ultimately greater, but it turns out that no, not at all. River City Girls may perhaps even be the best beat-em-up we've ever played. Offering all the fun and goofy action you'd wish for, it goes great lengths in preventing the usual sins of the genre, where bare-bones movesets and little variety makes it a mind-numbing slog. River City Girls constantly throws you something new and exciting to keep your attention at all times. It's a wild ride of beating the living daylight out of anything and anyone that comes in your way. You know, a typical girl's day out. In Baba Is You, the solution to a puzzle will literally sound something like, you gotta drop the concept of a river into the wall so you can redefine your existence as a victory to win. And it will not just make perfect sense to people, they will feel dumb for not getting it. This is at its core a simple Sokoban title where you push blocks and switch around some variables, but at the same time also an exploration in bending reality and turning the laws of the universe on its head. Even if you feel like this is incomprehensible 4D chess that slightly terrifies you, just playing around in Baba Is You and seeing the scope of what you can actually do and accomplish is a splendid little toy just in itself. That was quite a bunch. You have no idea how long this took to actually record. And And as we said, we know we've missed a whole load of stuff. Here's looking at you, Apple Arcade. You terrible, wonderful thing that we can't access. There's just so many games we had time and money to play. Hopefully, we introduced you to something interesting, and if nothing else, perhaps it gave a bit more weight to this past year in games. If there is anything in particular you think that we missed, or some games on the list that you enjoyed especially much, then feel free to share it with us. We would love to know what caught your interest last year. Also, we're very sorry for making something very different. We know that the YouTube algorithm hates that. Sorry, YouTube. But we hope you like it anyway. We are working on other things that are more philosophical and
Pretentious.
Pretentious, yes, like usual.
Yeah. Also, I want to nominate Y2K.
No, don't.
Because
Sorry.
I'm pretentious.
Okay.
Heard.
So let's thank all our patrons who last time we had just a few, and this time we have a lot of them. Thank you. And okay, so let's just take them in order here. Tommy Håkansson, Anonymous, K. Axwell, Sweet Pink, Andrew Jones, Nischsvät, Nocturno, Afayette, Huang Wu, Raresut, Emily Smith, Morgan, Casey Explosion, Iantu, Aaron Rain, and Flim Flamberg.
That's a good name. I
Yeah,
like that.
it's a good name.
Flim
Also,
Flamberg.
if we pronounced anything wrong in this one, please tell us, because we want to
will
make it right.
Enunciate your name very good.
Very good. We want to do that. So please, if we do that, please tell us. If you want to support us too, you can do that on patreon.com/transparens. Now go work on the video.
The next one.
The next one.
Expect like early February.
Yeah. Early February.
It will be very pretentious.
It will be very pretentious. When you listen to it, it will be like us sounding like, oh, we are so smart. No.
It will be about Y2K.
No, it will not be about Y2K.
What are you talking
really.
about?
So, it's not that good. It's not very good. It's not very good. Bye.